Welcome to the Black People. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Cheta Wanze.
Cheta, so for the first time for the first time on the Black People, we'll be recording me and you from hotel rooms. You are somewhere in Nigeria and
I'm in Abuja.
holiday. You're in Abuja, the seat of power.
Yeah.
And I'm holidaying with the family in Scotland. So this is a hotel episode. If
If such a thing never existed.
Yeah, So it's been, I know the last week when we spoke, we spoke about the slow news week and it being silly season. And
it has heated up suddenly.
But it has heated up suddenly because it seems that the press is dead set on ensuring that rather than pursue non-existent political stories, they will create a lot of heat on their own. But even beyond that, the government has also thought, you know what, let's give you something to chew on. So today we want to talk about the fallout of the hounding, because let's call it what it is. It was a hounding of Professor Jason Arde. And we see now the fallout, not just from his death, but also the students of Brampton Manor Academy, because some human being has been emboldened to talk about Black people and not being worthy of attaining anything on merit. Now they are also being accused of impropriety in their A-level results. And then on the other hand, we want to talk about the new immigration rules coming into effect. So Cheta, over to you.
Right over to me. So I think it's important first, if we could basically observe a few seconds of silence for Professor Arde. God raise the dead.
Amen.
It's really sad, and I would ashamedly or shamefully admit that when I heard it was a listener to the podcast who actually sent me. Of course, I'm in Nigeria for a while to come. You know that my work involves political consulting, political analysis, and all of that. There's an election coming up here, so because of that, I tend to, as always happens whenever I'm out of the UK, I tend to bunch my absorption of UK news to specific periods of the day. The way the algorithm works, basically, is when, especially for someone like me who tries to avoid push notifications as much as I can, the little that gets pushed to you tends to come from local sources. So when I'm in Nigeria, when I'm in Ghana, it's local news that is pushed to me. So I have to go out of my way deliberately to get UK news, which I usually do at the end of the day. I just catch up, usually within an hour block. So someone sent me, one of our listeners sent me and requested not to be mentioned, so I will mention the person's name. Sent me the news that Ade had died. And eventually when I got home, because I was still in Lagos at the time, when I got home, I checked it out and I saw that it was suicide. And my first personal reaction before a bit of shame washed over me was, he's so weak-minded. As in, why would he? Basically, that's typical Nigerian bravado, which is something that we tend to be raised up with. But as I thought about it, I was like, between the time that he resigned, I came to discover that between the time he resigned and when he committed suicide, there were 180 plus articles about him. And that leads to the question, is he a public figure? The man has already resigned. Why are you piling on? And it means we can't avoid the discussion about race. And then it's all happened in the same week or in this, so he committed suicide on the same day, Friday, as A-level results were published in the UK. And Brampton Manor Academy is a school in East London. It's in a deprived area. And for years before they got a new principal, a Nigerian, the school had been performing very badly. But when that principal took over, and his name is at the top of my head somewhere, but I can't bring it out. And that's a disservice to him. So during the course of the recording, if I remember the name, I will say it because it has to be said. Um, after he took over, he really puts the place, under strict standards, strict standards. Children began to be pushed. That nonsense of, just
Sorry,
for
Chita.
simply, yes.
Dayo Olukoshi.
Dayo Olukoshi. Thank you very much. So, what Mr. Olukoshi did was he began to really push his students. As in, no, you don't get a trophy simply for coming to school. We don't give you an A just because you did 95% attendance. You have to put in the work. And since he started that regime, the school has really turned it around. Year after year after year, they are one of the best performing schools in the country. Their students regularly get A's, A stars, and regularly get in places at the top schools in the UK: Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, elite universities. This year was not different. But we always have, and this year it's actually louder. People, right-wing people online, number one, they're attacking the school, attacking the students, saying that this is for ignoring, not forgetting, ignoring the fact that the A-level exams are marked blind. So the people who are marking do not know who the students are or where the students are from. Yeah, these people are just, making noise that, these students are only getting these high grades because of DEI, or in the UK, it's supposed to be called EDI. So that's the first level of illiteracy from the people who are making this noise. So what is happening is that they are trying to shift the terms of the debates and making the achievements of these students conditional. And that in itself puts everything into context. You cannot take Jason Arde's story, flawed as he was, and he was flawed. He told a lot of fabulous stories about his own life achievements. That cannot be taken away. But the truth of the matter is, and there are people who have come out to draw comparisons. Boris Johnson, they've drawn comparisons with still active university lecturers, and they have pointed out the fact that the person who started this nonsense, I'm not going to dignify him by calling his name, his initials are NC, is an avowed racist who believes that black people are not equal to white people intellectually. As in, he actually wrote a paper, and that's what got him fired from Cambridge, that claims that it is only in sports and entertainment that black people can excel. So you cannot divorce the Arde case from this kind of nonsense, because when you see the attacks on the Brampton Manor Academy students, there's a danger of them suffering psychologically. Many of them could begin to feel imposter syndrome. We should also look at the effects on their white counterparts, who will look at them and believe that they are not meant to be there. And this will have the long-term effect of weakening public support for programs that can actually help talented students who are from disadvantaged backgrounds to compete fairly. And you can, again, somebody did a beautiful thread on Twitter the other day, talked about how many of the elites in the UK got to where they are not by merit, but by the class system.
Mm.
So so why is it that these same people who did not get to where they are by merit, but because of imamaju, let's call it what it is,
Mhm.
are now turning around to attack people?
Um, it's I think what we should do now, and is what a lot of people have boldly been doing, is call this thing what it is. It is nothing but racism of the highest order. As we said in the last episode, the mistake, if you can call it that Jason Arde made, was to give these guys, the people like the NC chap, the ammunition with which to not just target him, but what they've started doing is it's almost like the Americanization of UK politics, where they found that lightning rod in Jason Ade, and they've then used it to say, see, all these people are like that. So the come for, and you can see it was almost after Jason's death was reported on Twitter. You could tell that it was either people were in one WhatsApp group or in several WhatsApp groups where the talking lines had been dished out. So from people like James Cleverly, who disgusts me on so many levels, um, rather than call out, okay, fine, you're a top conservative um MP, so maybe you want to play politics with it, and you don't want to say you want to believe that you are where you are not because of racism but because of meritocracy. No worries, but rather than to say specifically what the truth is, that this man has been hounded by the press, rather you're
Hounded to
saying, oh, he
death.
hounded to death. You're saying, oh, he was a fantasist and Cambridge gave a fantasist a platform and now they put him in this limelight. It was disgusting to see people like Cleverly, who ordinarily one would think uh should be instinctive in feeling the pains of people uh that look like him, not because he's a black person, but because he is old enough to have seen the metamorphosis of race relations in this country. But what does he do for the sake of politics, for the sake of a place at that top table, and for the sake of trying to outmaneuver Reform and Farage and restore on their rights? Doesn't call out racism when he sees it, but instead makes the man even more complicit in what has been a hounding to the death. But what you also see, is what you've mentioned, this brilliant children of Brampton Manor Academy, suddenly there's a campaign to try and grind them into the dust. To try and, even before they've started their lives in uni, to try and make them doubt their existence at those prestigious institutions. And again, as we said last week, they should never ever doubt themselves, because these are results that they have worked hard for. And if anyone, going back to, I think it was a few episodes ago when we talked about the university versus apprenticeship route, going back to anyone who knows an African parent, if the grades are supposed to be 100% and you come back with 98, they will ask you what happened to the
What
remaining
happened
two
to the remaining
points.
5? Yeah, to the
You
remaining 2.
understand? Yeah, so there's something cultural in driving children to attain educational uh,
I
success.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't
and
go so far, as my
mm,
apologies. I wouldn't go so
mm,
far as to say it's cultural. I think um, we've, we've accepted that argument for too long, because in all
mm,
honesty, you really have to look at the country I'm sitting in to know
mm,
that excellence is not a given. And it's not something that we always demand. What I think, and this is something that we have discussed in this podcast, is the way the immigration system in Western countries is set up.
mm,
It attracts the it draws from our home countries the best,
mm.
the people who actually push themselves. And we're not just talking of Africa, Indians. I mean, last week we talked about the numbers.
Mhm,
14% of Indians have a university degree. 9% of Nigerians have a university degree, and it is from that pool that the UK draws its
Oh, okay.
immigrants.
But
Yeah.
but to go back,
Sorry. Yeah.
mm,
Sorry to listen. A second number that I saw yesterday in a presentation that I attended, only 9% of Nigerians have ever left the country. So
mm,
the point is, it's a very tiny pool, people who are motivated to push their children. So you are drawing the best and you expect them to come to your country and become mediocre. It's not going to happen.
mm. Okay. But to go back to that cultural argument, I would argue that it's also cultural because if you look at up until now, when the value system or the value system, again, if you take Nigeria as an example, has gradually for over a decade just been decimated so that money, as it were, is the most for most people. Money then becomes the ultimate goal. However, if you look at when we were growing up, every we could argue that yes, it was a small subset of us that were in university, but if or sorry in primary school or in secondary school, but even then, the the competition, the spirit of competition that was instilled in us, I've not necessarily seen it here. So when I say cultural, and again, we can always argue that culture evolves over time. But when I say cultural, I'm saying that once you're in that school environment, you what is expected of you is not, oh well, I tried. Which is why,
Yes.
there was always that thing of coming back and you're asked, what is your result this term? What position were you in this term versus last term? And, and of course, the stories of people trying to make turn 24 into 94 and all those silly things.
Yeah.
But
Not
culture,
silly. Con- uh,
yeah,
I mean, it
it's
shows a
survival.
deep, it shows a deep yearning to achieve.
Yeah, and when people will tell you, sorry, Sha, when
Yeah, no,
people
go
will
on,
then
go on.
say, oh, put all the titles in my name, so sir, doctor, engineer. I mean, it became ridiculous that somebody, even
So ridiculous.
somebody who's a pharmacist will insist, okay, call me pharmacist. We just want to show that we have one, it's like there's one up over the other. But Cheta, the other thing that has contributed to this that has not necessarily been seen is now, on one hand, you can say is a statement of or the fact that is there, but on the other hand, you can also argue that it's another example of yet trying to pander to the reform class. Is this argument that has been made by I think two different education secretaries now that the white working class boys have been failed by the education system? And the way that thing is framed, it's almost like because these boys are white and they're working class, the education system says, no, we don't want anything to do with you. And in doing so, creates a victim narrative that doesn't look at the question of what has become permissible in school. Why are people getting things like participation medal? Why is there no drive to get people, because if you drive students now, suddenly, oh, this is too much for me. But so in framing a narrative that white working class boys are being failed or being let down by the educational system, it creates a counter narrative that people like these kids at Brampton Manor are being let into the system because of EDI. And what you then do is you embolden people, the Farage class, the Reform class, the Restore class, to then say, oh, look, these people who have just immigrated here in the past 5 years, why are they getting A's in their A levels? Meanwhile, these other kids are being let down by the education system. So that when Jason Arde, fantasies though he may be, uh, gets to a top level, they then say, see, we told you. They've platformed those people and they've let down your children. There's a lack of sincerity in
And lack of introspection.
education and lack of introspection. And sadly, the system is being set up where your children, my children, will grow up being questioned for putting in all their hard work, whereas people for whom it was okay to just do the best minimum because the system is coddling a lot of people. And that is another thing that should be looked at. The system is coddling a lot of people, and
Yes.
whereas we don't have it in our culture to coddle,
Yeah.
and then they're just being set up by a system that refuses to tell itself the truth.
Yeah, you are very right. I mean, I've told the story before of one of the reasons we left hall was because we found that consistently in school our kids were not being challenged, and we're being told that, oh, you have to just by being there you've already done the best, and we did not want that to become their mindsets. Yeah, my wife was
Mm,
was dead set against that. So you now have children who we consistently reinforce that no, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to push yourself. You have to push yourself. So imagine a situation where they push themselves and then attain the highest possible grades, and then some lunatic will come and say, "Oh, they only got there because they are DEI." I mean
mm.
I will strangle that person. What kind of nonsense is
Okay,
that?
okay, we will not, Jetta. We
Yeah.
will.
Well,
Uh,
yeah,
we,
I will not literally, of course, we know. But you get the points.
no, no,
Of course, you know how it
I
comes across in Igbo.
yes,
It's yeah.
yeah.
Now, one point I want to make
Which is quite interesting is thinking when you translate
from
an
one
Igbo
language to
thought
the other.
from one language to another, it loses all context. But sorry, carry on.
Yeah, yeah, because it's a point that I think is now that this has happened. That NC guy, he drew
Mm,
in the paper that he wrote to push his points, his very stupid points that black people are genetically intellectually inferior to white people. He referenced IQ tests that were designed in the 1920s in Jim Crow America, which showed that black people um, were were intellectually inferior to white people because black people on average got lower scores. What he and I'm very certain that he deliberately ignored it. What he ignored is that those tests, 50 years later, those tests were reframed using that they were administered in in different languages. So those same
mm,
tests were now administered not in quote and unquote the King's English or the Queen's English, but were
mm,
now administered to black people in Ebonics. They're basically
mm,
Black American English. And guess what? The average performance was the same as the average performance of white populations.
mm, mm,
Essentially, when people point to IQ tests quote and unquote standardized IQ tests and use it as examples to say, oh, African countries have lower IQs than European countries or than white populations in the Americas. The arguments will be, okay, why don't I give you an IQ test in Igbo?
mm.
As I am, so I handle multiple languages. I can think in multiple languages. You can think only in English, but then you come and you say, "Oh, I am superior to you. You are daft."
It's also worth mentioning, and even though it's sometimes said in passing, but you should take people for who they are and what they put out. It's worth mentioning that this guy has said that after whatever revolution he's talking about, he will be head of the Department of Eugenics and Health Science at Harvard. Now, eugenics
Straight, straight. That's Hitler's language. Straight.
is Hitler's language because eugenics is the branch of, I mean, I'll call it, is it this
Pseudoscience.
is pseudoscience that again goes back to this. It talks about selective breeding to produce the master race. So you get to see the
What this
mindset this
individual
man
is.
is he's steeped in, and like someone put up a picture and said, "Look at the master race," which is this guy. What I find interesting is that the people who always push a narrative of being superior are people who, on the face of it, will be will not stand toe to toe against a 12-year-old. Let me put it that way. But then it seems that in looking at their own shortcomings and in looking at their own frailty, they get so wrapped up in jealousy and in hatred for those
Petty
who are able to
jealousy.
do stuff better than them, and then say, you know what, we should all just kill you. Because when you look at eugenics, that is what it is. We will.
Petty
I
jealousy.
mean, when they say
Exactly.
selective breeding,
Inadequate people.
yeah, selective breeding is a very nice way of saying we will stop, whether through killing or whether sterilization, a certain group of people from giving birth, so that only a few set of people will continue to, you know. So this is the guy who has been platformed. And I mean, I would say that the British media should hang its head in shame. However,
Nah,
they are
that group of people, not capable.
But anyway, Cheta, should we take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the changes to the immigration rules.
Yes, please.
Welcome back to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Cheta Wanze.
Cheta, we managed to rile you up some in the first half of this episode, and I wonder if this second half will take it a notch higher, or perhaps pour some cold water on your thoughts. I know what I'm thinking, but
very sanguine, though. I mean, I'm not roasting in heat like some people. Enjoy very nice weather, although Abuja is flooded. Okay, well, was flooded a couple of days ago. Thank you, Wiki. But that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, so Cheta, again, I'll say over to you because I know this is something that you really wanted to talk about, and it's something I would always, at every opportunity, just remind new listeners, if about why we started this podcast and why it's called the Black Paper. Excuse me, which was in direct response to the white paper released by the government on immigration changes.
And we call her house.
By the Shabana Mahmood was there. Well, I said this. She still is Home Secretary.
Thank you, Anzi.
But Cheta, that was a piece of real politics. And remember, I don't want us to digress. But remember when these.
Him.
No. I'm telling you. Remember when I mentioned that if. No, hang on. When I said that if Kesama knows what to do, he should create a coalition in his cabinet, which he never did. Bonham, on the other hand, has played into that, a bit, but it's it's smarter politics than Kestama. It's smarter politics than Kestama. Even you will have to admit, you Lib Dem Tory. But anyway, so here we are with the Black
somebody's
Paper.
going to Lib Dem and a Tory. And how is it that you use that as a
no, but Lib Dems are Tory light.
Ha, Mr. Onoha.
Who are the people that have gone into coalition with the Tories?
Labour has gone into coalition with the Tories before.
Yeah, wait, in recent memory. Lib Dems.
You see yourself. Now you're shifting the goalpost.
Anyway, so the Black Paper was created so that we can look at issues that affect us, or the news of the day, the politics of the day, the policies of the day, but not just look at them as news issues, but look at them through the lens of African heritage communities. And just last week on August 12th, something that should slightly worry some of us, and I said slightly, Cheta, because perhaps again I'm ensconced in the circles I move around. But
yes,
when it comes, no, it's not that. I'm even talking about when it comes to migrants. I apart from a few people, a lot of people who have not come here seeking asylum. However, it doesn't mean that there are not those within our community who are. And I can think of a few countries, and I know a lot of people from that. But so that is why this is an important topic. The changes to the immigration and asylum rules that were brought in on August 12th. And Cheta, I'll leave that to you now to talk about.
So basically, there are three broad changes. The asylum appeals, they've launched a target for faster removal. So basically, the Home Office wants non-detained foreigners and people who are receiving asylum support to have their appeals heard within 24 weeks. So right now it's an average of 67. So they want to bring it down by a factor of three. Um, they're establishing something called the Independent Immigration Appeals Authority, so that they can accelerate removals and save money. And they since August 3, so these two were August 12, but since August 3, they've implemented wider rule changes, including tougher suitability tests and other measures to tighten things across the system. Personally, I think that this whole framing of speed is equal to justice is very dangerous. This, when you have, so there are certain class of people that will be hit immediately. Basically, people who have weak paperwork, again, very important. Not that they don't have paperwork, but their paperwork is weak. So, and I think so Marina Pukis, she's a TV commentator. She's
Mm,
very much on the left of politics. I like her a lot. I like the way she thinks. Now her parents are Italian. She was born and brought up in the UK. And she made a point yesterday when they were talking about, because she linked the whole thing with respect to Jason Arde to to immigration. And she used herself as an example. She's never had any real problem simply because she's white.
mm,
But there was a time shortly after Brexit happened. That was the first time she realized what ethnic minorities are going through. Because at the time, her parents began to have issues. Her parents have indefinite leave to remain, have never gotten UK passports. They've
mm,
just been, I mean, there was no real motivation. And that's a difference between European immigrants to the UK and non-European immigrants to the UK. We have an incentive to go all out and get the passport because we are likely to have these issues somewhere along the
mm,
line. And it is what happened to Windrush. The Windrush people, many of them have been in the UK, in some cases more than 50 years, yet because they had never bothered to get the passports, they were suddenly
mm,
deemed illegal immigrants and
mhm,
deported. So this covers weak paperwork. There are some people who have language barriers. Um, as in, no matter how hard, and see, at the end of the day, learning language is a skill.
mm,
There are people who, no matter how hard they try, how hard you push them, you are not, it's kind of like me and Yoruba. Mm?
mm.
My wife is Yoruba. My father-in-law, God rest his soul, kept hounding me to learn the language. For some reason, and perhaps maybe as a reaction to his hounding, I don't know. But
Mm.
for some reason, and for the record, I kind of understand Yoruba. So when my wife and her siblings are talking, I mean, I get what they're saying because hey, I don't want them to plant a coup in my house. But I can't speak. Whereas I was able to pick Hausa faster. I do
Well,
better in French.
Hausa is a simpler language, really.
It
The
doesn't
structure,
matter. Yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. The point is, some people pick some languages faster than they pick other languages.
Mm,
So it is a skill. So you have to understand and accept that there are people who could move to the UK and be in the UK for 50 years. Or a better example, America, because there are many people, that's something that Donald Trump and Steve Miller have used, that how can they
mm,
come to our country, especially when they're usually talking about that with respect to Latinos. How can they come to our country and not learn to speak English? Heck, there are people who can be immersed somewhere for years and they will not be able to have a serious conversation. They can never really absorb the language that is not the language of their childhood. And it is scientifically proven that the best time, if you want a child or if you want a person to be multilingual, the best time to open his brain is when he's a kid. That's a scientific fact. So this whole speed equal to justice framing, what if the person who they've suddenly caught and say he's an illegal immigrant, the person may have been there the requisite number of years, but somehow the only language he really speaks is Ibira. Where are you going to find Ibira interpreters?
It's for me. What's even more worrying, Cheta, than the speed equals to justice framing is the makeup of this IIAA, the what's it called, immigration,
the new agency.
The new agency, the Independent Immigration Appeals Authority. Cheta, it's going to be made up, and now this is where
it's going to be the UK's own ICE.
Yeah, but you know what, these guys are hearing appeals, so they're not. Yes, no, so they're not even removing; they're just hearing or determining appeals.
Oh, please!
But Cheta, they are not legally trained individuals. These are people who can just be called off the streets, like me, like you, and they'll be told, right, go in there and hear these appeals. Now, why this is disturbing?
Why me and you? They're not going to call us.
Hey, one can hope, yeah. But why this is disturbing is that if you have people who have been steadily fed on a diet of misinformation and hatred by the likes of Reform, by the likes of now, even the conservatives in how they try to frame a lot of race relations. And if by some sections, I mean, I'm not going to lie, but by some sections of Labour who are trying to...
Why did you say conservatives? But no, because you say some sections of Labour.
Oh, no, because it's not everyone. I mean, you cannot look at someone like Angela Rayner and say, well, she's championing this. You can't look at Burnham. You can't look at Abbott. There are vocal voices in Labour who are championing that Britain should be a fair and just society. Whereas you see and sadly, I'm yet to see that one person in the Conservative Party who is saying, hang on, we're going too far. Definitely not in Reform, definitely not in Restore. The other people who are trying to speak sensibly about this are the Lib Dems, yes, the Greens, so you can broadly say this is a right-left divide. And even though the Lib Dems are Tory light, but anyway.
Can I give you two names?
No.
In the Tories. I know I can't give you one any Reform. John Whittingdale.
Okay, I don't know him.
Yeah, do a Google search about him.
Okay, we'll do.
And then Damian Green. So you can't go so far as to say that they are pro-immigration. You can't go so far as to say that.
You can't, yeah.
But they are not, they're not rabid. They're not hostile. You understand?
They're not James Cleverly.
They're more.
Or Kemi Badenoch.
Okay. Their posture is more about, this is immigration is a fact of life. Let us manage it. But this thing of fighting, they're not into that at all.
So what I was getting at, Cheta, is if you have a population that has been fed steadily, misinformed about immigration, and suddenly you pull them off the streets and you say you're going to be you're going to be part of this independent immigration appeal, Cheta, it won't even get up to 24 weeks. In 2 weeks, it will be denial. It will be like a very bad episode of Bovie's what's that, Passport on Arrival, where you've met those guys on a bad day and all they're doing is denying you. And this is very worrying because at least if you're a judge, if you're a trained legal practitioner, you are trained to look at the facts. Now, whether that supersedes your instincts is a different thing altogether. But at least
Okay,
you're
because I was about
trained
to give you an example of somebody
yeah,
that is trained.
no, but then you're trained to look at arguments based on facts. However, if you're a member of the public, who all you're watching is GB News, who all you're looking at, getting your news source from Elon Musk's Twitter, all you're doing is
anyway,
going
I'm
there.
interrupting you. No, but did you see what Julia Brewster, whatever is her name, as in the way she's been behaving onto Jason Arde? The reason it's entered my head is because you mentioned GB News. Anyway, please carry on.
Yeah, so I'm worried really that you're going to have for lay people, because again, that's what it is, lay people who have a reason, a motivation to not want to see any non-white person judge appeals full of non-white people.
Yeah.
And the question is, how did you get this to this your decision?
To this point.
And so now you have a serious government policy being judged by one, public opinion, but even two, and even worse, probably the need to win the next election. And in doing so, what you're going to see is no government, whether it's this one or this color or a different color, will be willing to say, hang on, this process was flawed from the very beginning. We should change it. And what does my head in, Cheta, is for a country that is celebrated for its law and processes. I mean, if you look at Nigeria, like the basis of Nigerian law and many Commonwealth laws is English common law. So for a country who has influenced the legal system of half the world to now be decimating its legal system in less than a decade, it's shocking.
Yeah. I mean, a good question to ask is, because the key thing that I can't really get around is this speed is equal to justice framing. It's so egregious, and you have to ask the question of Shabana Mahmood, as in, how does cutting 2/3 of the time for legal representation improve justice? I know she's a lawyer, Abby. She's a lawyer. So how did she come about that? And this whole Independent Immigration Appeals Authority, what does independence really mean? If they're working to targets, my own understanding of independence is that nobody is rushing them, nobody's telling them what to do. But in all honesty, the bigger picture is that this is part of a pattern. When you consider the visa break on Cameroon, Sudan, you consider the partnership that Tinubu signed for removal of Nigerians, and then the pending abolition of the 10-year route. Basically, Britain is closing doors systematically, and it's what one of the things that I find ironic is that they will still open these doors again. It's something that we can bet on, because the problems that's brought, or the issues that brought about this have not gone away and are not going to go away. There's a shortage of skills. There's a shortage of people who are willing to do certain jobs. So you have you have this thing of especially for jobs at the lower end of the scale. You have these jobs, you want people to come in and do these jobs, but you are placing the immigration barrier so high that the people who come in are people who naturally cannot do those jobs.
And talk about ironies as well. I just remember that when David Lammy attempted to remove jury trials, there was bedlam. Everybody everybody, a lot of people went up in arms against the idea of removing jury trials to speed up processes.
I
But
wonder how
now,
he's doing now.
yeah, but now there's the attempt to speed up
To speed
processes
up.
again on immigration. And everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Because immigrants are politically convenient now. Immigrants are the political football.
Anyway, Chesa, I'll tell you what will be inconvenient. That's if we carry on past a
Because
certain
it
time.
risks becoming a rant.
It risks becoming a rant. So
Yeah.
on that
Oh, by the way, the
inconvenience,
football season is starting. Let's
yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. It's football is resuming. I mean,
Look,
it's
I'm not a football
proper
person,
football.
which is why I have a healthy heart, because I'm not week in, week out putting my,
I don't understand.
giving my heart palpitations. I'm not a football person, so I'm good.
No, how does that qualify equate with healthy heart?
Because I'm not stressing my heart every week, whether my team will win or lose, or whether some other team will gain a few more points, which will bring down the points of.
I don't understand. Am I not healthier than you?
The only sport I get involved in is the blood sport of politics, and it's bloody enough.
Oh, come on! You should watch a bit of footy.
Oh no, I do. I do watch football. There was a time when my wife was really supporting Man U, and whenever Man U is playing, I'll support the other team just to piss her off.
You are behaving like when so my wife does the same nonsense that my mom does. Oh, by the way, Derby County lost to start the season.
You see, but you did this, you see, and so I know one Forest fan who will be overjoyed.
So last year we were playing so for those of you who don't know, there are two clubs only that I support: Juventus in Italy and Banter Insurance in Nigeria. Occasionally I'm sympathetic to three other clubs. Deportivo La Coruña in Spain, Eimba in Nigeria, and then increasing in Milton Keynes.
No, please don't just say Eimba in Nigeria, please. Eimba in Aba.
Okay, Eimba in Aba.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So Banter Insurance in Benin, where I grew up. Undukwe grew up in Aba, which is why he keeps talking about Eimba, even though he has never been to any Eimba match.
The 082, baby. 082.
So anyway, the bottom line is the story I want to tell is that last year Juventus' biggest rival in Italy is Inter Milan. So last year Juventus was playing Inter Milan, and I happened to be at my parents' place. So my mom came to sit down beside me and then asked a question: which team am I supporting? And I said, the Juventus won in black and white. So and that was a crazy match. It ended 4-3 in Juve's favor. So she started supporting the other team. Like, I'm looking at this old woman and saying, what's wrong with you? Every time Inter played a good decision, she'll be like, yeah, like a hooligan. Like, what's wrong with you? So when eventually Juve won the game, and so a few minutes to the end, about 10 minutes to the end, we were 3-1 down. So my mom was already doing me, ooh, that kind of stuff. Then we suddenly scored, vroom, vroom, vroom. So I had to talk to her, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And she was like, my friend, behave yourself. Now, see, now when she started pulling motherly authority on me. Like, I said, if I was still a much younger guy,
your dad did not come out and say, why are you talking to my wife like that?
If I was still a much younger person, they would have told me to kneel down. Anyway. All right. So see you at the next one.
See you at the next one, Jetta.